Hey everyone, hope you have an amazing day. This is FC with CappersDirect.com here to talk to you guys and give you guys a first look into this upcoming UFC card on Saturday. That's right, guys. On Saturday, January 14th, we have UFC Vegas 67, Kelvin Gastelum versus Nassourdine Imavov. You guys are going to want to tune in because we're going to go over and break down the main card fights right now. Let's get into it. All right, guys, let's go ahead and get into the main event first. Your main event is going to come at you from the middleweight division. That's going to be 185 pounds. Guys, you guys know, if you guys have been around this channel or have seen our write-ups, you guys know that Kelvin Gastelum is a really good friend of mine. And I bet against my friends a lot. I've bet against Kelvin a lot. I've max bet against my friends a lot. Sometimes it works out for me. Sometimes it doesn't. But Kelvin's a good friend of mine, so I have to be careful what I say here. In this fight, I mean, it is what it is. Kelvin is a shorter guy. He's a boxer. He's 1-4 in his last 5 fights, but those fights are against really good competition. He has a wrestling background. He can go to his wrestling. We saw this recently in one of his fights. He did go to the wrestling to secure a victory, and he does beat guys that are like this. When guys have to take this step up, Kelvin Gastelum is usually not the guy you want to face. He's not the person you want in front of you. And then in a main event here where we have 5 rounds where Kelvin has the experience, he's going to be tough. It's going to be a tough out, but he is coming off of a layoff 1 year. Nassourdine Imavov, he's the younger guy. He's going to be taller, longer. He knows this. He's going to be the better striker. He's got really cool and really sneaky submissions that I've seen recently that he's been working on, that if it comes about, he's going to try to hit it. But at the end of the day, even though he has all these positive, Nassourdine, you have to wonder about that gas tank. We've seen him slow down in fights, and then we've seen at times where he's pushed past that fatigue point. But recently, it was just shocking because in a 3rd round he took it off. We saw that recently, so it is kind of nerve-wracking what's going to happen in the 4th and 5th round against a very experienced guy. Kelvin Gastelum in this equation needs to come out here, in my opinion, and grapple. He needs to come out here and wrestle. He's coming off of a layoff of a whole year. He's going to have a little bit of rust. Instead of going out there and trying to get his timing and in his boxing, I want to see him get in there, grapple right away, take Nassourdine down, because Nassourdine is one of these guys that when you get him down, he can be controlled. He does stay down there. He has a tendency to do that. Sometimes it's hard to get him down, but if you work for it, it'll pay off in terms of control time and wearing him down. So again, when you look at the Nassourdine Imavov side, you have to notice that he's got heart for days. He's younger. He's longer. He's the better striker. This may be the first time he's gone 5 rounds, but he's confident. He's cocky. And there's a lot to like on his side. But you have someone like Kelvin Gastelum who's a gangster. I mean, there is an X factor in the Kelvin Gastelum camp that if you guys want more information on, I'm going to put it in the write-up for Friday. So you guys are going to want this write-up particularly because I think Kelvin has an X factor, and I think Nassourdine Imavov is coming in with a game plan that allows for a really good bet on this fight. So you guys are going to have to tune in, but I think it's going to be an intriguing main event where Kelvin Gastelum is coming back. He's going to have to shake off some rust, and Nassourdine Imavov is going to give him a challenge. But I like this fight. I like this fight a lot, but let's get into your next fight. So your next fight is coming at you from the featherweight division, 145 pounds, guys. We have Dan Ige versus Damon Jackson. Let's get into the Dan Ige side. I mean, honestly, both these guys, I have underestimated both of them. I've bet against them, and they have made me pay in the past. Not necessarily too big, but I have underestimated both of them. They have showed up when I didn't think they were going to show up. I thought at times one of them was overtraining. Come to find out, they weren't overtraining. They're training just the perfect amount because they came out and dominated. But Dan Ige, again, a guy who I underestimate, 31 years old. He's on a 3-fight losing streak. He needs this win. I'm talking to Dan Ige. He knows that he needs to step this thing up, and he knows that this is a step down in competition for him. When it comes to the striking, Dan Ige is going to have power, but he can be taken down. At the end of the day, this whole matchup for me, when you break it down, comes down to strength, and I'll tell you why. When you look at Damon Jackson, this is another guy I've underestimated. I thought Damon Jackson was going to outright lose, and then he dominates. I thought Damon Jackson was going to get knocked out, and then he goes out and knocks a guy out. He's 34 years old. He knows that this is his time. This is his run. He's caught something magical in his eyes. We're talking about a 4-fight win streak against pretty okay competition. So this is the guy coming in with momentum. This is going to be a step up in competition for him. I personally, when it comes down to Damon Jackson, I think he has a very suspect chin. I think he covers that chin with his grappling, but at the end of the day, it boils down to his wrestling and BJJ versus the striking of Dan Ige. And I told you guys that this boils down to one thing. It boils down to strength for me. We've seen Dan Ige get taken down and held down by someone like the Korean Zombie, somebody who was bigger, stronger. Damon Jackson is going to be taller. Is he going to be stronger? Is he going to be able to hold Dan Ige down? Because if that's the case, we're looking at a Damon Jackson who's going to probably dominate this fight. But if he's not stronger than Dan Ige has shown in the past the tendency to get right back up from a person who he's as strong as or as technical as, or is a little bit stronger than, right? If he's stronger than you, he can get up pretty quickly. So it's hard to get Dan down and then hold Dan down unless you're stronger than him. So is Damon Jackson stronger than Dan Ige? Is he going to be able to get those positions where he gets Dan Ige down and threatens things from different chokes from different aspects and different areas? We know that Dan Ige is a black belt in BJJ. He's solid on the ground. Yes, can he be submitted? Yes. Can he slip up? Of course. And Damon Jackson is slick enough to do it. But it comes down to strength. And on Friday, guys, I'm going to let you guys know exactly what I think about this breakdown. But at the end of the day, that's how this boils down to strength. Dan Ige, striker. Is he going to knock him out? We're looking at power. We're looking at Dan inside the distance. Damon Jackson. We're looking at Damon Jackson takedowns. Get Dan Ige down. At that point, you're looking at Damon Jackson by decision. So a lot to think, a lot to digest in this fight. Very interesting. On Friday, we're going to get into this further. So let's get into your next fight. All right, so your next fight is coming at you from the middleweight division. That's 185 pounds. We have Punahele Soriano versus Roman Kopylov. This is going to be a very close fight. Both these fighters are good. Let's look at Puna. Puna is going to be the power guy. Puna has a power edge. I don't care what anyone says. He has a wrestling background that he doesn't always use. He's big on his knockout power. We see this a lot with these muscle-bound guys that they go in there and they just swing big, and once they get that knockout, they begin to chase the dragon, right? They constantly want it. They want that thrill. They want that adrenaline rush. So we have Puna, who has a wrestling background, has a black belt in judo, doesn't always use it, but we know why he doesn't always use it. A lot of times, Puna, man, that gas tank really isn't there. He will gas, and when he gasses, it's not pretty. All the technique goes out the window. He becomes very hittable, and we see this a lot when these fighters become very tired, their hands come down, they're very susceptible to a knockout just because everything is delayed. They're getting hit. They're not understanding what's going on. Everything's woozy. They look like they're out on their feet when really they're not. They're just tired, right? We have Roman Kopylov, though, who hasn't necessarily been a standout in the UFC. I hear a lot of people speak poorly of Roman Kopylov and his takedown defense. I don't know what these people are talking about. The guy has good takedown defense. I think it's a myth that, the way for Puna to beat Roman is just to take him down. I mean, that could be a possibility. I do think Puna, because he is as strong as he is, could frustrate Roman and get him on the feet I mean, get him on the ground and get him out of his game a little bit. Maybe that could happen. But Kopylov, what I've seen from him, great takedown defense. The guy is going to be taller. He's going to be a little bit longer, and he's more of these war of attrition type fighters. So he's a fighter that likes to keep things standing. Pop, 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 pop. Big shot to the body. Pop, pop, pop. Big shot to the head, right? Where Puna is throwing bombs from the beginning. He's just whop, whop, whop. So we have a little bit of a contrast here, but we know that Puna slows down. So people that are looking at Puna are looking Puna first round, looking Puna knockout, because they realize, man, the gas tank might not be there. If he does wrestle, what happens? I mean, does he tire himself out even more? Roman Kopylov, they're looking at him and saying, well, he's a war of attrition type fighter, right? Which means he's in there. He gets in there. He has higher volume. He's hitting to the body. He likes to mix things up and likes to get these later round knockouts, sometimes second round and late, sometimes third round knockouts through accumulation of volume, right? You have a very close fight at that point, because if this thing stays standing, Roman Kopylov has a shot because he does have the volume. Puna has a shot of knocking him out. Roman has a really good chin and can also go to the wrestling himself if this thing does get a little bit hairy for him. So, I mean, here you have a live underdog either way, but Roman is a super live underdog in my opinion, being taller, being longer, knowing what to expect from Puna, knowing how to beat Puna, also having in your back pocket this really great takedown defense and this heart to scramble up right away. I think Roman has a shot, but you guys know I love me some Puna. We've bet a lot on Puna, and we've bet against Puna 2 times, and it's worked out for us big time. This is a fight that I do see as a closer fight because I do expect Puna to keep this thing standing. And I think if it were ideal, you're going to want a Puna who is going to come out here swinging bombs, but has a game plan to take this thing down, have surprise takedown. So swing a big bomb, but then go for the takedown. Something unexpected. Roman's not expecting to be taken down in this fight. He's expecting Puna to come in and swing big. So if Puna were to take that approach, and if we thought, oh, Puna has 100% has the gas tank, this would be Puna all day. But we know those flaws are there. Gas tank issues. We know that he doesn't go to the wrestling because he needs to conserve that energy. So things aren't necessarily there, and he needs more experience. And Roman Kopylov is going to go in there, and he's going to go in there and show him the business. And I think it's going to be a very close fight. Tune in on Friday on the write-ups because, I'm going to tell you exactly what's going to go down in this fight. So tune in. Let's get into your next fight. Your next fight is coming at you from the bantamweight division, a female fight, a women's MMA fight at 135 pounds. And y'all, I know people on women's MMA, not here, not us. We've made a ton of money on women's MMA, but there is something to be said about fights going to decision and how judges judge women fights. And I think women MMA fights, I think that's relevant here. So let's look at Ketlen Vieira, for instance. Ketlen Vieira versus Raquel Pennington at 135 pounds. Ketlen Vieira, she's on a 2-fight win streak. But if you look at it, that last fight, she was clinched up against the cage the whole time. And in my opinion, lost to Holly Holm. Holly Holm won that fight. But the judges gave it to her via split decision. Even her coach was like, you've lost this fight into the 5th round. You've lost this fight. You need this round. You need to win this round. You need a finisher. You need to finish now. I've told you, you've messed up this whole time. Like, he was on her in the corner, like telling her and getting her to want to get a finish. And I think that did light a fire under her the whole time. He was yelling at her like, what are you doing? What are you doing? You're throwing this away. You're giving this fight away. And then in the end, she wins by split decision. His eyes are like, oh my God, yeah, let's do this. We won, yeah. So, Ketlen Vieira, she broke my heart with that fight because I did have a bet on Holly Holm. And I mean, still to this day, you go back and watch that fight, Holly Holm clinched her the whole time. And really, I think that's imperative here because even though Ketlen Vieira has that slight height and reach advantage, she's going to want to mix things up more than Raquel Pennington. Ketlen Vieira has learned from her mistake. When she fought Holly Holm, she should have gone for the takedown more, and she didn't. She sort of went in there, kind of allowed Holly to dictate everything, and I see her being more proactive with her grappling. Now, Raquel Pennington, let's look at her. She's coming in here with a 4-fight win streak, and she's welcoming a new baby into her life, and her life partner, so who also fights in the UFC. So she has a ton of motivation, and she's been training hard. I've seen a lot of her training footage in her training camp. She's been training really hard for this fight. She saw the Holly Holm fight and said, okay, Ketlen Vieira is susceptible to being clinched and pushed up against the fence. I'll do it better than Holly. I will admit, when Holly did fight Ketlen Vieira, Holly did look a little bit old. She just did. She had a little bit of ring rust, and I think that showed. And some of those exchanges weren't necessarily as clean, where Raquel Pennington is like, I can make those exchanges cleaner. I can bring the same game plan Holly Holm did and dominate this girl and force the judges to see it my way. The problem is we've already seen that game plan fail sort of. I mean, any other 3 judges would have been there. They would have given it to Holly Holm, but you still have to give Ketlen Vieira the credit and also realize she's been there with a clinch heavy game plan. She survived it. She won. She's going to learn. She's going to look to learn from those mistakes. So, Raquel coming in with this game plan, is she going to be strong enough to hold her there? Both these girls are very big girls. Is Raquel going to be surprised by the surprise takedown by Ketlen Vieira? Ketlen has some crazy power. At the same time, man, I've seen her wobbled by some shots that she's just a concerning fighter to bet on. At the end of the day, though, the reason why I started off saying like, hey, you have to be careful with judges and all this stuff is because I do see this fight going to decision. I do think that's where this goes. When a fight of this magnitude and this sort of style goes to decision, who do you favor? Like Raquel Pennington could have had her up against the fence clinching the whole time, just beating her brains in, really working her. And the second round comes out, Ketlen Vieira scoops up a takedown and holds Raquel down and just beats her, right? Turns the tide. Going into the third round, what's going to happen? Both girls are getting tired. Raquel clinches for half the round, right? And then Ketlen Vieira finishes on top because she gets a takedown in the last minute. There's going to be some judges that say, okay, well, she finished on top. She wins the fight, right? She obviously won round 2 and she finished on top. She wins. There's going to be some judges that are like, obviously round 1 was dominated by Raquel. Most of round 3 was dominated by Raquel, except for that crazy fluke takedown at the end, right? So where one judge is seeing it as a fluke, the other judge is seeing it as the deciding factor on why she won the fight. So when you have that kind of dynamic, and these judges don't necessarily know how to judge these fights because they're used to seeing a dominant person. They're used to seeing a person that, A side versus a B side, the A side dominating and just being like, oh, that's overwhelmingly side A, right? When it comes to these matchups that are very close, that you're looking at it and the strike count is just like one off, and it came down to one strike to the head versus one leg kick difference. Who are these judges really paying attention to? Who's gaining that ring generalship? Those are the things you have to worry about. So I can see the concern in not wanting to bet this fight, but tune in to the write-up. We're going to break this down a little bit further. And if we have a bet on this fight, it will be because we have some really good, solid information that I find relative to, hey, it's time to make some money. But again, decision fight, I think goes to decision. I think it's a close fight. I think you have to be careful when it comes down to women's MMA close fights, when I think the style is going to be a back and forth one where a judge is really going to have to pay attention. Can't really count on these judges to really pay attention to the small details in order to say this fighter has a solid edge over the other one. So 50-50 fight, in my opinion. I think it's going to be a good one, but at the end of the day, I hate these people who are like, oh, let's just bypass it because it's a women's MMA fight. Forget that, man. They deserve their credit, man. These women are very, very equipped and they're very good and they work very hard. So let's give them the respect they deserve. Let's break down their fights and really make sure. I mean, I'm pretty sure that we may be the maybe the only service out there that has max bet when it comes down to women fights, because we're not scared, right? When we have information, when we have a look, we're not scared to pull the trigger and we win them. Again, that's just us, right? We love women's MMA here. Other people don't, but I'm saying let's give them some respect and let's get into your next fight. All right, for your last fight that we're going to go over on this card, guys, it's a doozy. It's a good one. We have Umar Nurmagomedov versus Hani Barcelos in the bantamweight division, 135 pounds. Let's get into Umar Nurmagomedov. The kid is 15-0. 26-year-old whiz kid. He's got the last name. He's got the coach. He's got the camp. He's got the look. He's got the skills. He is going to be minus 500 in this fight or worse, which is crazy when you look at the person he's standing against. Raoni Barcelos is one of the best fighters in the UFC at this weight class. A little older, but still one of the best. How in the hell is Umar Nurmagomedov coming in here at minus 500 against a stud like Raoni Barcelos? I mean, I get it. Umar has the record, has the style. I mean, he can come out here and try to knock out Raoni Barcelos, who is getting a little bit older. We'll get into Raoni Barcelos, but he can come out here and grapple him, take him down, and win a decision. So I can see the many paths of victory for Umar, but I mean, minus 500 is crazy when you have someone as good as Raoni Barcelos. Raoni Barcelos is 35 years old. He is slowing down. We have seen that in past fights. The reason why Raoni Barcelos is probably at this line is because we saw those very crazy losses. One of them to Victor Henry and one of them to Timur Valiev. The Timur Valiev one makes a little bit of sense when you start looking into it. But when you start looking at that Victor Henry one, even that one sort of makes sense. But it would also have to collide with Raoni Barcelos aging. And that's what I think we're seeing here. Raoni Barcelos, 35 years old, slowing down, isn't really as crisp as he was when he first came into the UFC. You see this. Sometimes he comes in there and looks very, very good early on, but it's later on in fights that you see the technique level go down. If he has an edge, like a grappling edge, usually those techniques will remain to where they can still gain an advantage over that other person because he's that much better. But when it's neck and neck, when it's same skill for skill, or even Raoni Barcelos is maybe a little bit outmatched, the later the fight goes, you see him giving up position. You see his hands go down. You see him slowing down. So, man, the age is catching up to him, but Raoni Barcelos is a dog. I mean, the guy tends to lose these fights later on, but he's got a ton of volume. He's got great Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. He's a black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. He's wrestled with national wrestling team over there and proved himself to do well. He's boxed with the Olympic boxing team over there. I mean, the guy is super solid, very, very solid, constantly trying to progress his skills, constantly trying to better himself. And he's going up against just a brick wall in a Nurmagomedov who's never lost. This fight is going to be an amazing fight. As you guys can see, it's lining up to be probably one of the best fights of the night. At the end of the day, we have Umar, who is going to look to use a little bit of that length and try to stun Raoni Barcelos. I think there's some things about Raoni Barcelos' game that if you break him down, there's some techniques that will reach him before he reaches you, and it's very evident. So Umar's looking at those things. The Nurmagomedov camp is looking at those things. I know the pressure is on Khabib. He's got a ton of pressure with these guys every single time. He's bringing great guys in, and a lot of them are 15-0. A lot of them have very, 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 just they don't have a lot of losses. So when he goes into these fights, it's a lot of pressure on him. He wants these guys to get fully paid. And so, we're going to start seeing probably Khabib take a step down from coaching soon. And I think it's going to probably happen off of this fight. That's sort of concerning. That's going to have, Umar's going to have his coach there, but is it going to be in the back of his mind? Is he going to be thinking about that? Next time it's not going to be like this. So soak it up. Is that going to be the motivation that he needs to win? But again, man, to be a minus 500 against a fighter like Raoni Barcelos is ridiculous. It's crazy. A fighter of that caliber, you got to understand, this is a fighter that has it has it all together. The guy is crisp with his boxing. Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, I mean, he's like levels above the rest of the field when it comes down to BJJ. When it comes down to wrestling, the kid's got it. He can wrestle. He's strong. He's got that. I mean, he's got so many great tools. It's just his age. The age is the only thing that's going up against him. But for a guy this skilled to be this big of an underdog is just crazy to me, in a fight that I expect to be a good one. If I were to see Umar winning, Nurmagomedov winning. If I were to see Umar winning, I think it happens late. I know a lot of people are expecting like a surprise knee to stun Raoni Barcelos early. I think Raoni Barcelos is super live, where I think Umar could catch him late. I think Raoni Barcelos is live for a decision. I think he can come out here and really look to stun Umar and show him a different realm, but I just don't necessarily think that's possible. If this thing can remain standing, I think Raoni Barcelos can put some combos together to hurt Umar, maybe even get him out there. But man, guys, this is a really great fight. Tune in on Friday and I'll tell you exactly what I think. But you sort of see where I'm getting at with it. I mean, for someone to be as skilled as Raoni Barcelos, to be this big of an underdog is nuts. So in our bets, I'm sure something will reflect here, and we'll make sure you guys are tuning in to those write-ups on Friday, where I detail everything. I break down the fighter and I break down the conclusion of what I think is going to happen. Now, in that write-up, that's where my conclusion is going to be. These aren't necessarily going to be conclusions. I may look at you and say Umar's going to win this fight today, right? As of right now. But there's a whole week that goes by. There's a whole weight cut process. There's a whole game planning, last minute game planning. There's last minute injuries that could take place. There's a ton of things that could alter that. So you guys are going to want to tune in on Friday and look for my write-ups. My write-ups are detailed out. I talk about one fighter, I talk about the other, much like I did here, but then I go into what I think is exactly going to happen. And that's where you find those plus 500s and those little juicy, take this guy by decision. Just put a little sprinkle on it because it's going to be amazing. So you guys tune in on Friday for the write-ups. But if you like this kind of content, guys, be sure to tune into the channel. Make sure to hit that like button and turn your post notifications on. Those post notifications tell you guys every time that we have a banger or a great video for you guys like this one. And comment down below UFC, guys, because UFC's back for this year. It's time to make some money. On Saturday, January 14th, guys, we are going to make a ton of money in the UFC. Be sure to tune in on Friday for those write-ups. I'm going to detail it out for you because Saturday in the UFC, it's going to be a great day to win, baby. So let's get it.